I just have to go through a couple of technical things. I hope that I'm on now. Let's see. Yes, I am. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to start off by showing you a brief history of how I started off in this industry. Right now, currently, I am a toy sculptor, but I've worn many hats in my career. And I would say that from a very young age, I was very attuned to cartoons. Saturday morning cartoons, you couldn't get me away from the TV. I probably watched 3 or 4 hours in the morning. And my mom really hated me watching the Flintstones. And ironically, that was one of the first projects that I worked on. So what I'm going to do, I can't really answer these questions at the beginning. So I have 3 stations to show you. The first station here, I've got mostly animated cartoon characters and what I've done with my toys. So I'm just going to flip this around if I can figure out there. So we're going to start off. This is one of the very first rotate your phone, okay? This is one of the very first projects that I wound up doing once I graduated from art college. These are Flintstone marker caps. Much to my mom's chagrin, I wound up getting a living from working with these animated characters. Some of the other stuff that obviously has influenced me is Bugs Bunny. You may have seen this particular one here. I've recently posted images of this guy, and this is the actual original sculpture, and you can see it's coming apart into pieces now. But in order to mold this, I did have to saw it apart into its various limbs, and I still have it after all these years. This was done, I think, in 1996, if I remember correctly. It's seen better days, obviously, but this is the casting, which I recently found out that I had sent a copy of this to Chuck Jones, and for 20 years I didn't know what had happened to it. And I got an email from his grandson, and apparently he did receive it, and he took photographs of it for me, so the mystery was solved, and boy, I couldn't be happier. So yeah, obviously I'm a huge Bugs Bunny fan, and can't forget Daffy. I love Daffy. Sorry, my hand's shaking a little bit here. But I've run the whole gamut of doing Bugs Bunny stuff. This is actually, you couldn't get this in the States. This is from Canada, and it was made by a company called Centura Brands, and it's still got the original soap in it. Now, that was done in 1992, I believe, and it still has a nice scent to it. So, and then I do a lot of fan art too. Whoops. And there's my interpretation of a flipped out Bugs Bunny. This is done in Super Sculpey. Throughout my career, I've used a lot of different clays, and I found that the Super Sculpey lent itself very well to doing these toys, because once it's baked, of course, it's really hard and it's easy to take molds of them. So I got a number of contracts to do Disney paraphernalia. All right, so I did a line of Aladdin. There's the Lion King, there's Simba, and Iago from Aladdin. I also do other commissions and stuff, so this was done for a small budget film up here in Canada. I'm also a big fan of Mad Magazine, and this character was from Mad Magazine, and it was lifted right off of a Don Martin cartoon, and I just loved the characters that he was doing. Over here, I wanted to stretch what I was doing, and I thought I would go into garage kits at one point, and this is the beast that I created, kind of in the vein of what the Shifletts are doing, but I'll leave that to them. It's not really my forte, although I did enjoy doing it. Yeah. This has seen better days. One thing I did find out is that the resin that you use is kind of important, because with this particular resin, it was leaching out some oils, and I wanted to sculpt the teeth in there, but no matter what kind of epoxy putty or whatever I was using, I couldn't get it to stay in the mouth. It wasn't securing to the resin. So that's why he's never had a proper set of teeth. But anyway, so that was my foray into Frazetta styled characters. That was actually the first time I met the Shifletts, was down at Comic Con where I showed that. I think that was in 1995 or something like that. All right, so that's the first station I wanted to show you. I think I've gone over everything there. I also make clocks. This is my giraffe clock here. Obviously, I like doing animals, so these are my own designs. And that sun face rotates once an hour. I think it needs a battery change. This is from an IP that I was working on with a writer by the name of Mike Erskine-Kelly, and we put together quite a few shows, and that was the lead character from that show. You might recall this one. This is a Ferengi. I did this for Thinkway Toys back in the 90s, mid-90s, I guess, and it was for a bus bank. It too has seen better days. You can see the cracks that are in there, but that's Super Sculpey. Now, I don't work with Super Sculpey so much anymore. I've changed clays so many times, but I've found that I really enjoy, there are a couple that I really enjoy. One of them is JMac, which holds detail really well, and it doesn't stick to tools. The other one is Monster Clay, and I've been using Monster Clay for a number of years now, and it's the first time I've used a clay where I'll just wrap it in bubble wrap to bring to my students to show them what I'm working on, and I'll wrap my knuckles on it just to show them how stable the clay is. It's almost indestructible. All right, so my next workstation here. Now that I'm working in toys, these are some of the earlier ones that I was doing. This one is a Borg, obviously from Star Trek. It was a lunchbox, and it actually opens up and says a few lines from the show, but I don't have any batteries to demonstrate that to you. But underneath all that layering, that's actually my face. I thought I got a real kick out of, maybe 20,000 of those sitting on Toys R Us shelves, all copies of my head. I did a Ferengi as well. And I also do animation busts for various people. And all right, so I'm going to take a couple of questions now. Let's see what we got here. Okay, no, it doesn't. Oh, do I have questions? I don't know. Okay, I'm just going to continue. They don't appear to be showing up on my screen. Feel free to ask me any questions. What I am doing now, I decided that, in between the toy work that I've just shown you, I did work on films. I went into work on animated features like Ice Age, The Incredibles, Ratatouille, and I love doing that kind of work. But now that I'm back in Canada, I want to do something for myself. And so I fell back on what I know best, and that is toys. I applied the knowledge that I have, and I decided to create my own line of toys so that I wouldn't have to pay licensing fees. But of course, that can be difficult because nobody's seen my properties before, and it's a lot easier to sell licensed products, but extremely expensive to acquire the license to do that. So I funded these toys 100% myself, and it's a labor of love. So let me show you what I've got. These are what I call the Classic Monsters collection. And we have Drac, Frankie, Wolfie, and the Mummy. Now, these are all done within the computer. One of the nice things about working in computer animation is that I learned how to use the computer software. And a natural extension of that was to transition into 3D printing. Now, what you see here are 3D prints. Now, what is cool about 3D printing, of course, is that to make iterative work, it's very cost effective compared to, if you have to make several sculpts of the same design but slightly different each time. That can get expensive, especially when you're shipping it overseas, so you have to make molds in between each step. And having a 3D printer does away with those steps. So, for instance, with this Frankie here, I don't know whether you can see the difference, but as I was working on this, I did this is my very first print, actually. I really enjoyed the detail that I could pull out with this 3D printer. And hey, Shane, nice to see you. Sorry, I'm missing all these questions and comments. Anyway, so with this Frankie, I determined that he was much too small. Proportions were not correct for the age demographic that I wanted to target. And so I scaled his head up, and he's quite a bit larger. And, the space of time it took me to go from there to there was about 36 hours. And that included about 24 hours of print time. So, and I didn't have to make a mold, obviously, because these are rock hard resin, and I can just send these off to the factory. I don't have to wait, stop, take molds, and send the castings. Now, as you can see here, this one has a lovely hole in it. This is Drac, and I thought I'd show this to you because it's not without its faults, 3D printing, and it's a huge learning curve, and it took me quite a while to get really comfortable with the printer, and of course this is a failed print, right? And the resin is quite expensive, so every time you have a print failure, it adds up. And I think with this particular character, I went through about 30 prints, maybe 20 prints before I arrived at something that I was happy with. Things were failing left, right, and center. As it turns out, there was a fault with the printer, so it had to be replaced. Anyway, those are the prototypes for Drac and Frankie. I also have a prototype here for Wolfie. And now this is all done in ZBrush, okay? So you can see the lovely details that you can get in virtual clay. I put a little bit more detail in the feet of Drac, right? That's what I really love about this medium, the 3D printing. So I have another series that's coming down the tubes. I have 5 more minutes left. This is Gummer, and this is the actual resin, the prototype resin. This was a reject. So this is not the one that got sent to the Orient, obviously. They make a mold of it in Asia, and then it comes back, and this is what it looks like. And this is the vinyl. So this is for my next series. There's also a pirate. I unfortunately don't have one that's printed or in a dark enough material that you can really see what I've got there, but that's the pirate sitting on his stash of gold with a treasure chest. And then I have Gilly. Now Gilly is based loosely off of Creature from the Black Lagoon. He hasn't earned his sea legs yet. This is the tadpole phase of my interpretation of the Creature from the Black Lagoon. And now I haven't made these ones too visible yet, but these are the next series of pigs with bowler hats. And I'll just show you for giggles here. This is what it looks like coming off the printer. You got this lattice work of supports, and this is the underside. All right, so I've got keys in there so that when I glue these pieces together, they align perfectly. And here we go again where where I found, yeah, I'm rotating it, come on. Okay, there we go. I found that the first iteration I did was too small, and so I scaled him up and made him much larger. And here we go with the second pig. I loved working on this guy because I wanted to create sort of clothing that looked like he'd been soaked. So that's, and these are loosely based off of Laurel and Hardy. Okay, I have 2.5 minutes left. I want to come over here to my workstation here and show you how I create these things. I can't give you a full demonstration in 2.5 minutes, obviously. And I apologize for not getting to questions. Maybe I'll get to them afterwards. I'll email you guys. But this is what the pig looks like within the computer. And because I'm holding the phone up, I can't do an elaborate demonstration here. But what I can do is show you, like Joe did earlier, what you can do with this clay. You can really distort this stuff. And, you know, you can play around. And there are various brushes that you can use. And obviously, to get this kind of detail, you need to have very specialized, smaller tools. I also have Gummer here, the shark, to show you. And this is what it looks like on the underside with the keys, and it's been hollowed out. And again, you know, I can do crazy things to it if I wanted to. Here it is colored. I really like this program, by the way. This is ZBrush, and it's a wonderful program to work with. And I sculpt a lot more in ZBrush than I do physical clay now. Sorry, let's see if I can get to some questions here. That was a lot to show you guys. How hard do you think it is to go from traditional medium to digital? I think the first program that you learn can be difficult, but once you get that under your belt, the rest sort of falls into place. ZBrush is awesome. It did take me about 6 weeks to get up to speed with it so that I was comfortable enough that I can do it without thinking. Yeah, so, and then to show you my printer, this is the printer that I'm using now. It's a Formlabs printer, and you can see there's a vat of liquid resin in there. Sorry, it's not too bright, but that's how I create these things. Okay, I'm about out of time. We got 15 seconds. It's been great. Thank you so much, Jared and Brandon. And I apologize to all those people who want to connect on Facebook. I haven't gotten to you yet, but I promise I will. I've got about 1,000 people requesting friendships on there, so it'll take me a while to get through to you. Okay, thanks very much, and have a good night, and stay safe, everyone. Bye.